Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. So for here today I'm filming another sit-down video, but this one is slightly different than the usual content that I put out on this channel. There are a few reasons for it. First, the weather is horrible outside, so we haven't gone out, haven't done much, so I could not vlog. Second, we are living still under the chaos where the painters did not get done with the house as I expected. It passed 2 weeks long, but also because there came a moment in this year for me that I really feel like ready to reassess certain approaches with which I have started this year, to sort of hit that reset button, pause, and reintroduce few of the habits that I have been carrying on past year that I felt like that was doing very good for my well-being, and also introduce a few new ones. While I was thinking about it and just making the list for myself, I thought, why not film this video about the self-care routine for you as well, and share a few of those tips. If you're going through something similar, maybe it will be useful. So let's get started. I know that a lot of people do such kind of videos at the beginning of the year, reintroducing new habits, making their plans for new approaches, or just continuing the old ones. But to be very frank, I was not in the perfect state of mind at the beginning of 2022. Actually, it did not really start very well for me. When I will articulate right now what was the reason for it, it might sound ridiculous for many, and I know how insignificant it sounds, especially when I as well try to say it out loud, but it has really made a huge negative impact on my well-being, on my mental state, and I really needed a phase to slow down, to give myself a time to heal. I don't know if the approach that I took to heal myself from that fact was the right approach, because it might have even prolonged my dwelling and like sort of soaking up drowning in a swamp and sort of bathing in it. But that's exactly how I felt, and I did not have the energy to contradict that. And I feel like that I'm at the spot right now where I really want to do something against it, because the state that I am at is not as well something satisfying and is not doing anything good. So to cut it short, at the end of the year I failed the second time to my driving license, and it was for the practice part. The first failure was already big enough drama for me, because I'm not used to failing any type of exam. Actually, it was the first exam that I ever failed. I think talking about it and why I took it so personal will drive me quite far, but the second failure really physically made me sick as well. I could not cope with it physically as well very well at all. I was so sick that I almost ended up in the hospital, had pain that no painkiller was taking away in my gut area, and then followed with some bleeding, some rectal bleeding, and also I could not pick myself up for a few days, like literally could not stand up, and putting myself and my body through such a strain just for a driving exam and the driving license, which I don't even need. Might sound ridiculous, but it's also one way to see how unprepared I was for the failure, how I never really learned how to deal with it, and how important it is to teach the children from the young age as well the normality of failing. To cut it short, that's not the only thing. There was as well changes at my work life. I have new boss who is as well having new preferences, new focus points, new expectations. Obviously through that you get a new wave of stress. There is also winter, and we have very gloomy, very stormy winter this year in Hamburg. I did not really manage to encourage myself to go out enough, so I pretty much stayed indoors. I'm still doing the home office since New Year, so I've been just 2 times at office, which means that I've literally lived from pajamas, just switching to my top for the meetings. But it became one sort of a lost state of mind, where I was just waking up and just working half day through and eating the other half, not even so much again concentrating on what I consume, which I really loved to do Last year I also did sports few times. I can count it on one hand over this 2 months, which made me feel very bad about myself every single week, but I just did not have power to continue with my routine. It was not the physical exhaustion, it was the exhaustion that was starting from my mind. That pretty much sums up the precondition through which I am starting this video and the necessity of my reset that I want to talk about. So the first thing that I have as a tip for myself and I want to work on is fine-tuning the relationship with my inner voice inside my head. We all have that. As Singer calls it in the book Untethered Soul, which I recommend very much, by the way. It's our inner roommate that is constantly in there, making plans, making to-dos, talking to us, chit-chatting us constantly. And sometimes it sort of takes control over our lives and we feel like in this lost state. That's how obsessive that roommate can get over our life. I think it's not very easy to identify that voice, first of all, to shush it down, or maybe it's not even a good idea to quieten it down in every case, because sometimes the arguments or the reasons that it's giving us as valid is just very important to learn the process how to identify that thought. And the moment that you identify that there is someone together with you in the room, non-physically, talking to you through and giving you these ideas inside of your head, you are already detaching yourself from that voice and you have a little bit wider perspective, and then you have at least the decision power how to deal with that situation. So it's pretty given to a lot of people out there with stressful work and life conditions that we wake up first thing in the morning and we are already consumed with all the things that stand on our way throughout the day, the things that we have to do, or the challenges that we have to overcome, or that we did not manage to overcome, why we are not good enough, or self-doubt, are we good enough at all to overcome those. So what I want to do is to prepare myself in a way for a positive self-talk, and really do that intentionally. So when I feel like overwhelmed, to take the time and just take a deep breath and give myself as well a moment to really reflect on the situation. And often it's not the problem that the world around us is collapsing, but what our inner voice inside our head is making out of it and making it feel like. What my approach to the situation will be over the course of next few months is that when I feel like that there is constant worry in my head about one or another topic, I'm gonna try to write it down and give myself a few reasons why whatever I'm worried about is not valid. Like in everything else, our heads tend to dramatize things, and there are many proofs in our life that we have overcome even more difficult situations. We have achieved more difficult tasks. Second, sometimes you're not too overly critical. Sometimes there is a certain degree of truth to the thought or the worry that is constantly repeating inside your head. My goal is to try and oppose it with valid arguments. What's gonna happen in a situation if that thought comes true? What are the worst case scenarios that can happen in my life and how I could cope with them? And realizing that nothing of the slightest will happen that is inside my head building inner turmoil attached to it is just a fuss created inside my head. I know in that moment that my breathing comes back to a normal rhythm, that I'm in control of my body. So that's the approach that I want to employ with regards to the every other thought that is consuming me or overwhelming me or taking the control of myself, or at least the way I feel like at the moment. Second tip and the plan actually that I want to reintroduce to my life is going back to the physical activity that I was doing over the course of past year, and it did very well for me, for my mental state, but also for my physical well-being. I really felt toned, I felt more energetic, I felt more positive about things. Well, it's not a myth that when we are doing sports that serotonin is being produced. and it just makes us feel good, and it supports especially the people who are often dealing with a bit more negative thoughts, anxiety, or even in the process of healing the depression. So I was never doing sports just to reduce my kilograms. I'm tiny anyway. I was doing it because the process of it was making me feel good, no matter how stressful the day was. As soon as I rolled up my mat, and especially if I did something a little bit more active in terms of like cardio, I felt like that my body was releasing all the stressors and all the negativity out to the world, and I felt rejoiced and calmed afterwards. As I said at the beginning, unfortunately I did not find motivation in myself to continue with it when this failure with the driving exam happened at the end of the year. Then I was physically sick, and especially that prolonged the time and the delay between my last session and then picking up myself became even more difficult. But now, especially throughout this 2 months when I have done almost nothing in terms of physical activity, and the weather has been dreadful and I have not been going outside regularly, I felt so down. My energy is low. I always feel like fatigued, sleepy, and I know that this is not the spiral that I want to continue with. I don't want to as well stress myself on particular dates and doing sports like 5 times a week. My goal would be to do any kind of physical activity rather than just sitting at the desk working and then rolling to the couch. So now that hopefully spring is gonna kick in soon, I want to promise to myself that I'm gonna be taking at least half an hour walks every single day, the days when I'm not doing sport, but at least to pursue my sport activities as well 3 times a day ideally. The third tip that I want to work on throughout this year is waking up a little bit earlier and going to bed a little earlier at the same time. So I don't want to reduce my sleeping time. I absolutely value the importance of a good night's sleep for a good day that has to follow. Not having a kid, probably people who are watching this and are having a kid gonna be laughing out loud, but I consider the uninterrupted at least 7-hour sleep of key importance for healthy, balanced lifestyle and good state of mind. So I want to pursue that. I've been pretty good at it because I am a good sleeper. Thanks God I don't suffer from insomnia apart from 1 or 2 occasions. I can put my head down on the pillow and I'm instantly sleeping, even on the worst days of my life. I already started to work on this. I'm making sure that I'm in bed before midnight and that I'm sleeping somewhere around 12 o'clock so that I can directly wake up at 8 o'clock and turn on my computer. Because I'm working from home, that is possible at the moment, but I want to make a step further and be at bed at 10 p.m. so that I can wake up at 7:30 and have a proper calm, slow breakfast in the morning, and then start the day with full of energy and content tummy. So this is something that I'm going to be really focusing on, especially that I have problems related to the digestive system, and the gut well-being is as well a core importance. Every stressor that we have in our life directly is linked to the way we can digest our food and get the benefits out of it in terms of nutrients. In my case, there is also this genetic background in play, and the issues that I am dealing with are also something that stem from my family. Especially in that context, it is absolutely important for me to have a balanced diet, and that brings me to my next tip. I want to promise myself to include greens almost in every meal. I noticed that throughout this past 2 months I have not been paying attention to what I eat at all. We are cooking most of the time at home. We love to cook, and my husband is the one who is always preparing the delicious meals for us, but I've been snacking continuously between the meals. Working from home really threw me out of my routine. I usually am very well in control of what I consume. As I said, right, because I was not in the right mental state, I did not really have power of will to pay attention to such things. So I was consuming chips, a lot of sugary stuff, which definitely has aggravated my acid reflux problems. I want to tackle that and once again go back to being very mindful about the meals that I eat, eating nourishing full-size portions, reducing the snacks to healthier alternatives like with nuts and fruits instead of all the sugary stuff, cutting down on ice cream, which is a big challenge for me as well, and including greens as a source of rich antioxidants in almost every meal. I don't want to stress on that as well, because there is never 0 to 100 margin when it comes to such rules. We always have something green in our fridge, be it green beans, be it cucumber, be it spinach, so it's super easy to add all those at the side of any meal that I'm gonna consume, and that's something that I would recommend all of you out there to try as well. The last tip that I have here, which I don't think that I am having very much issues with, but that I want to reinforce and strengthen even more throughout this year, is to be organized and structured. I think that life is so much easier when you have certain structure to the things and they just don't flow. I know that a lot of people live in a chaos and have certain logic in that chaos as well and thrive in it. If that's what you are, then good for you, go for it. But I feel very often overwhelmed and stressed because of the chaos that is created around me. My biggest tip would be to release your mind from that unnecessary junk of information and lists that you are creating in your head. Whatever you are doing, is it the things that you have to buy throughout the day on our day-to-day tasks? We sometimes identify things that are missing in the house and we need to repurchase, and we are keeping this in the back of our head like as a backlog constantly running, even if we are not focusing on it. And I feel like that sometimes our brains, these mini computers in our head, are having like this error happening constantly because we are overwhelmed with all the open files that we are dealing with. For me, I don't want to keep that information in my mind. I put everything down on the paper. I keep lists, I keep deadlines, I keep appointments, everything on the paper, and when I need to check on that, I check regularly either my phone calendar or my physical calendar, which I love so much. If you would ask me just like that, I would not be able to give you any birthdays, any dates, any appointments out of my mind, because I refuse to junk my head with that information. So that is the 5 tips that came to my mind at the moment, and I hope are useful to you as well to some degree, because that's the ones that I truthfully plan or partially am already implementing in my life and I'm gonna be reinforcing throughout 2022. Please let me know if there is something more that you would want to share with regards to the self-care tips for people who are generally dealing with anxiety problems and are sort of a little bit of control freaks about the processes in their life. Maybe there is something useful that I could pick up as well from you. Other than that, I thank you for your time. I hope this video doesn't turn out to be super long. Please don't forget to click a like and subscribe if you loved this video. I'm gonna be back in a week's time. Until then, I'm gonna say goodbye for now and see you on my next one.